Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller.
Yesterday, former police officer Derek Chauvin was sentenced to 22 and a half years in prison for the murder of George Floyd. And what was really troubling about this sentencing hearing was it wasn't really about trying to get justice for George Floyd by punishing a rogue police officer. It looked like one big sympathy session for Derek Chauvin. Now, as this whole sentencing hearing was going on, your Derek Chauvin was out here trying to make a Hail Mary effort to get a lighter sentence. And he was sitting there talking about how he was expressing condolences for the Floyd family, and he even brought out his mother in an effort to testify for him, talking about how he was such a good person, a statement that I would shake my head about, because when I look at the actions that this man participated in, I have to wonder what happened when she was raising this boy to become a man. Because when I look at the actions of Derek Chauvin, they were not the actions of a good person. They were not the actions of a good police officer, because a good police officer would not kneel on the neck of a suspect for over 9 minutes as he was having an anxiety attack and reacting to drugs. No, that good officer would have given him some care. But what is even more troubling was the way your white supremacists went about in this hearing, trying to make your Derek Chauvin a sympathetic figure for behavior that was extremely heinous and egregious. Now, when I take a critical examination of things as related to this whole George Floyd murder, I don't know what's more troubling, Derek Chauvin's actions or the actions of the people in the court during the sentencing hearing in an effort to try to humanize your Derek Chauvin. And I don't even know what's even more troubling than that. In the courtroom was your Attorney General. He was the most troubling one, because he was the one who started the process of trying to humanize your Derek Chauvin. And there are some behaviors, I say, that are so reprehensible and so inexcusable that you cannot humanize someone for participating in them. And what we saw with the murder of George Floyd was something that I could not make an excuse for, the way your Keith Ellison did in trying to say, oh, your Derek Chauvin was a human being. Well, I have to say he was a human being who knew right from wrong, and he was a human being held to a higher standard. And as an officer who took an oath to protect and serve, he understood the standard he was being held to, and he still went out here and betrayed that standard and betrayed that public trust, and he denied a human being the basic human right to receive any sort of care, all for a minor infringement, such as an allegation of passing a counterfeit $20 bill. Because I really want people to think about what the death of George Floyd was really all about. The death of George Floyd happened because the people in the Cup Foods racially profiled him, thought he went out here and spent a counterfeit $20 bill, and instead of just refusing the $20 bill, they called the police on this man, and this is what led to this man dying. Something so trivial, and your Derek Chauvin went out here and took this man's life over something so trivial, but they want us to believe that he needs to be humanized and we need to be sympathetic to him. Get the fuck out of here with that crap, because that's just not something that I would find any sort of justification for. But these white supremacists out here, they want to try to humanize this monster, and they're trying to humanize this monster in a last-ditch effort to try to preserve their whole platform of white supremacy in the criminal justice system, because the sentencing of Derek Chauvin, it is a statement about holding rogue police officers accountability, and it's also about setting a boundary for the way black people will be treated by the criminal justice system. And what your white supremacists were trying to do at the sentencing hearing of Derek Chauvin was trying to minimize the impact of the verdict that was passed, and they were trying to find a way to go out here and mete out what they thought to be rough justice in an effort to try to save face, because your white supremacists, they had their backs to the wall with the George Floyd murder, because the George Floyd murder was seen not only here in America, but it was seen in video that went viral all across the globe. And the only reason I believe your George Floyd was convicted was because that video was seen all across the globe, and it embarrassed the entire United States. Because in the big picture of the world, in the international community, the George Floyd murder was a major embarrassment to the United States in the global world. And in the global world, in countries that are considered to be our enemies, like Russia, North Korea, and Iran, they were calling us hypocrites for talking about freedom and human rights violations in those other countries. But then you had black people present as second-class citizens in the United States. And the only reason I believe that they gave your Derek Chauvin 22 years in prison is because they did not want to get embarrassed in the international community, because the whole world was watching the Derek Chauvin trial, and the whole world looking at the Derek Chauvin trial decided that if the United States goes out here and gives Derek Chauvin a light sentence, they cannot come to them in places like the G7 summit making allegations about your human rights violations in countries like China or Russia or Iran, because here the United States is participating in the same type of conduct. And even your Vladimir Putin, even though he is an enemy of the United States to some people, he called out your United States talking about Black Lives Matter in a recent meeting with Joe Biden. So they had to sacrifice your Derek Chauvin in order to save face in the international community. And that's the only reason why his sentence went above your sentencing guidelines, and he was given 22 years in prison, because your international community was watching, and they wanted to give him a sentence that would appease the international community. They really wanted to not lose more face in front of the international community, especially in these dealing with these other countries. So that's why they sacrificed your Derek Chauvin, and that's something white supremacy will do. They will go out of their way to sacrifice one rogue police officer in order to still be able to continue participating in their white supremacist action. So that's why I say that this sentence is really a mixed bag, because yes, we did get Derek Chauvin convicted. Yes, we did get a rogue police officer punished. And yes, we did manage to make a little bit of progress on the chessboard of white supremacy against white supremacy. But more and more black people need to realize that this is a chess game we're dealing with white supremacy. And yes, they will sacrifice a pawn here or there in order to continue playing that game that they have and continuing to be able to dictate the game on their terms. Because what they were doing with sacrificing Derek Chauvin and giving him 22 years was they were trying to, again, save their face and trying to preserve their institution. But black people have to keep pushing and pressing against this whole system of white supremacy and making efforts to try to establish a system of justice, because we need to finally create policies that set a harder boundary. Because yes, the Derek Chauvin conviction sets a legal precedent which starts laying the foundation for a boundary protecting the rights of black people, but black people have to continue pressing to cement more of a harder boundary, because what's really troubling is in in addition to going there and again trying to sympathize and humanize your Derek Chauvin, we also need to understand that we have enemies within, like your Keith Ellison, who was out here trying to sympathize and humanize a monster like Derek Chauvin. And that's something we need to deal with, because with black bootlicks like that working in the system, these people are working against us because all they're thinking about is getting votes for themselves and not thinking about getting the tangible of justice for black people. And we need people in place to work towards getting those tangibles of justice, because there's a lot more work to be done. Yes, they sacrificed Derek Chauvin, but we need to demand more tangibles like this George Floyd law being put into place, and policies that are put into place that punish rogue police officers and race soldiers for criminal behaviors that are perpetrated against black people. Because you cannot call a criminal justice system just when you have officers out here who brutalize and terrorize black people, and you also have power given to suburban commandos like George Zimmerman, and a criminal justice system that gives them a pass for murdering boys like Trayvon Martin and your Tamir Rice. No, we need a justice system that metes out justice and holds these people like your rogue police officers, your race soldiers, your beta male suburban commandos, and your Karens accountable. And we also need black people who have the backbone and the stones and the resolve to go out here and get that justice. And we need people to deal with cowards like your Christian Cooper, who allow these types of people a pass, and people like your Keith Ellison, who are looking to give people like Derek Chauvin a pass. Because these bootlicks, what they do is keep us from being able to get the justice that needs to be served, and they keep us from being able to see these rogue police officers punished, and they keep us from having a legal standard set in place and maintained that ensures that black people's rights will be protected. And again, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. Yes, Derek Chauvin has been convicted on the state level, but now we also need to ensure that the other 3 rogue police officers who stood there and did nothing and watched as this man was murdered right before our very eyes are also punished for being complicit in the murder of George Floyd. And we also need more black people, again, to go out here and demand the tangible of laws that punish rogue police officers, race soldiers, your beta male suburban commandos, and your Karens for their criminal behavior in things like the proposed George Floyd law or getting other types of legislation passed. Because if black people went out here and got your Joe Biden elected, then black people need to go out here and demand the tangible of a law that punishes these race soldiers, these rogue police officers, these Karens and beta male suburban commandos for their criminal behavior. Because as a voting bloc, we gave the left that victory, that gave them the White House, we gave them the House, we gave them the Senate, and they need to give us the tangible of policies that will punish these race soldiers, rogue police officers, beta male suburban commandos, and Karens, and finally establish a hard boundary that will send a message to those people in those groups that they will not go out here and infringe upon the rights of black Americans based on the color of their skin or their insecurities and feelings about being in the presence of black people. We need hard legislation, and we deserve to get hard legislation because we were, the group that went out here and voted in the largest numbers, and we deserve to get tangibles in exchange for our vote. And that's something that many black people aren't really thinking about as related to this whole George Floyd case, and they should think about it because it's a complete insult to us that we went out here in the largest numbers to vote for your Joe Biden and these leftists, and they go out here and give tangibles to your Asians in the form of an anti-Asian bill, even though Asians did not vote for your Joe Biden in large numbers, and your immigrants who are not even citizens, they got tangibles, but black people, we got no tangibles, and that's a crime as I see it, because we went out here and voted to again get rid of the evil racist orange man, but many of these people on the left, they don't really want to give us full justice or establish a standard of justice for us, and that, I believe, is a major crime. Now, your Derek Chauvin will be going away for 22 years, 22 and a half years actually, and there's a possibility that white supremacy may be playing chess with that, because what they will do is, yes, give him a sentence in the short term, talking about, yes, we got the number 22 and a half years, but then they'll start doing things like time served, and then they'll start doing things like good behavior, and then they'll try to do things on parole. So black people have to be on the lookout with white supremacy, because there's a game that they're playing with this Derek Chauvin, trying to humanize him and trying to make him a sympathetic figure, but that just shows how depraved these white supremacists are, because any human being who watched that video of George Floyd being murdered, there is no way you can make an excuse for this man and his actions, and the only place this man belongs is in prison, where he can go out here and be a part of the general population and finally have to deal with Bubba and Tiny and possibly getting that tight end turned into a wide receiver. That's the fate that Derek Chauvin deserves, being traded for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, and Fritos chips, because what he did was extremely egregious, and what he did was so reprehensible. There's no excusing what this man did in that time. There is no excusing anything that this man did or participated in. There is no excusing any of his behaviors, and there is no way anybody can go out here and make an excuse for this man, and that's why I was absolutely disgusted by your Keith Ellison going out here and trying to give this man a pass, talking about go easy on him. Well, why didn't he go easy on George Floyd? That's the critical question I would ask your Derek Chauvin when he's sent to prison. Why didn't you go easy on George Floyd? Here you are, an officer of the law who was given a position of power, and instead of you using your position responsibly, you abused your power and you took the life of a man with malice aforethought, and you violated the public trust that was given to you. You violated the laws of this country, and you participated in behavior that embarrassed the state you were in, embarrassed the city you were in, and embarrassed this country on an international scale. And there are still people sadly making excuses for this man, and there's no excusing his behavior, because what he did was extremely egregious. And personally, I don't believe 22 and a half years is enough time for this man. This man should have gotten at least 30 to 40 years in prison, because that would send a message to many of the rogue police officers, many of the race soldiers, many of the Karens, many of these beta male suburban commandos, that if you go out here and you take the life of a black American citizen, you will be punished for taking that black person's life, and you will be punished to the fullest extent of the law. That is the message that I wanted to see sent out here, because in order to stop these rogue police officers, race soldiers, suburban commandos, and Karens, we need legal precedent where these individuals are punished for their criminal behavior, because if we don't punish them, all it does is lead to these people escalating their behaviors and eventually participating in another incident that embarrasses the country internationally and makes the United States look like the other countries that it points the finger at all across the world, like Iraq, Iran, North Korea, and many of the rogue states. And the whole thing is, if we're a democracy, then we need to confront the hypocrisy regarding our criminal justice system and black Americans. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my SJS Direct publications that feature positive images of black people, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, and my men's issues books like The Man Crisis and Stop Simpin', you can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks in a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business at paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.